Okay, testing, testing. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? All right. Wonderful. Sorry about we were having a little bit of technical difficulties with our shades. Um, Welcome to the brandly newly repainted ballroom. Still kind of we had to clean up real quick so that we could have this program tonight because there's still a little painting going on. If you go to the restrooms down the hallway, you'll see there's still some wallpaper that's been removed, but we're getting there. And then later this week, the floors will be repolished, and we're really excited about that. So definitely come back and visit. All right. So let me get my script here because sometimes, I can ad lib, but not that great. All right. Welcome to Horticulture Corner Gourmet Mushrooms. Yeah. We did a mushrooms program about 2 years ago, and ever since people have been like, more mushrooms. And it's apparent by your attendance here tonight. My name is Denise Reagan. I'm the executive director of the Garden Club of Jacksonville. And joining me tonight from our staff is Corinne Lightfoot, our marketing and membership manager, who checked you in tonight. And also, I want to give a shout out to Shelby Hackett, our event staff, who is serving bar tonight. Yes, thanks to all of them. I want to remind you that membership is a really great thing. If you're a member of the Garden Club of Jacksonville, raise your hands. All right, the few, the proud. Just put that hand back there, pat yourself on the back. Very well done. And if you're not a member, guess what? It's okay. We love everyone. We are a community-based organization. We want you all to come to all of our programs. But if you want to become a member, ask one of the people that raised their hands. Ask me, ask Corinne. We would love to tell you why membership is so great. It definitely gets you all sorts of perks. I'd also like to thank the members of the Board of Trustees here. I know that Marty Jones, our president, is here. She is our newly inducted president, came in June. We're so excited to have her. One of the members of our strategic planning committee is here, Mika Hardison. So excited to have her here. We just went through that. More to come on that. And did I see anybody else from the board that snuck in? I didn't see them. Anyway, they're a very hardworking board. We really couldn't do any of this without them. So thank you to all of them. I want to tell you a little bit about sponsorships. The Garden Club of Jacksonville offers sponsorships, which help cover the research, planning, and execution of programs just like this one. You might think about a business or an organization or an individual that you interact with on a regular basis. Would they benefit from reaching new audiences like those at Garden Club Jacksonville? You could tell them about the great work that we do and why you're involved, why you came to a program just like this. You can direct them to our sponsor page on our website. They can see all the ways that we will recognize them before, during, and after our events. So please go to gardenclubjacks.org/sponsor. All right, I want to tell you about a couple of programs coming up next month, August 6th. We have Horticulture Corner, Lazy Gardening. Chanel Davis Bryant is going to explore the ethos of the lazy, chaotic gardener. She came up with that on her own. I thought that was so great. To create a garden you can love to be in without the pressure or the pretense. Gardening can be our place to leave the perfectionism, the shoulds, and the I really need to's behind us. All right. So that's August 6th. Please come to Lazy Gardening. And then after that, we have in September 10th is Get Show Ready. Who knows that the Garden Club organizes the Horticulture Show at the Jacksonville Fair? That's right. More of you should know this. We have a call for entries that's sitting there on the desk that you came in. Any gardener can enter the Horticulture Show, from young to old and everybody in between. This program is about helping you get ready. So, and it's also got some just plain old good advice for taking care of your plants. So how to prepare your plants so they can have their day in the spotlight. You can see examples of plants that have won in the past. And if you've got a plant that you want to show off, now is your chance. So bring plenty of questions on September 10th so you can enter your plants. And that entry is November 4th and 5th. And if you go to our website, you can kind of pre-register and tell us that you're going to enter your plant. Then we'll send you a reminder when it's time to bring your plant in. So go to our website and check that out. And then one more thing I want to tell you about is our open house. It's hard to believe, but fall is already coming. I know we're right in the middle of summer and we're all like, it's too hot. But October is coming, just like winter is coming. October is coming. And so October 3rd is our annual open house. We celebrate the upcoming year, and you can come and get to know other Garden Club Jacks members and other people who care about the Garden Club. You can stroll our campus while you enjoy live music, small bites, and a beverage, and then learn about all the reasons why you should get involved with our growing organization. So we hope to see you here October 3rd. All right, now I'm going to introduce our speaker for the evening, Noah Schleifer. I hope I got that right.
Good enough.
Schleifer?
Hello, check. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Is this working?
Yeah,
Is
can
it
you
on?
pronounce it for me?
Schleifer. Noah
Schleifer.
Schleifer. Hello.
Yes. So many
Hello.
vowels in there.
It's a tough one.
He's the owner and founder of Harmony Mushroom Company, Northeast Florida's leading provider of gourmet and medicinal mushrooms. Noah started Harmony Mushroom Company with the goal to lead, educate, innovate, and inspire, which he's definitely going to do all those today. If you have questions for Noah, he'd like you to do them at the end. Raise your hand. He will call on you, and he's going to repeat your question so we can capture it on our recording. And we want you to take a survey afterward. We're going to put up this QR code afterward. I want 100% participation and feedback. We really need your feedback. You need to tell us why he was so awesome, because I tell you right now, he's going to be great. So please go to that survey afterward and take it. It just takes a couple of minutes. All right. Without further ado, I give you Noah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. First, I want to just take a minute to thank Jacksonville Garden Club and Denise for putting this together. Denise and the team. Here's a round of applause for them. Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here. So yeah, a little bit about me. My name is Noah Schleifer. I started Harmony Mushroom Co. in 2021, really just as a hobby. I think this happens a lot, especially now that I'm, doing this and meeting so many other mushroom growers around the country. I meet so many people, same thing, starts as a hobby and then very quickly it takes over. So I'm sure you guys can associate that with like gardening. Very soon you have too many plants. And so yeah, it's taken over. I'm so glad that it's like what I do now. I never would have expected this if you told me 5 years ago that I would be growing mushrooms for, all of Northeast Florida and then just teaching as well. I would have not believed you. So it's super cool to see how this played out and I'm leaning into it. So yeah, I'm super happy to be here. So yeah, I'm going to start by talking a little bit about the farm. We're in Murray Hill. I live at the farm and I also grow all the mushrooms there. Here's a look at the inside of our grow room. In this space, it's about 200 square feet. So it's just a fraction of the size of this room. But in that space, we can grow 400 pounds of fresh mushrooms every week. We don't do that because that's like capacity. So, that's a lot of mushrooms. But during our peak seasons, we will do that. Usually it's a little cooler and restaurants are more popular and the heat is a little more tolerable, we'll do that. But yeah, that space, I started it in a garage building. It's a steel warehouse. It's 400 square feet. Whenever I bought my home, it was a building used for storage. I didn't have any real plan of what I was going to do with it yet, but once I started doing the mushroom growing, I was like, this is it. This is the perfect use for this space. So it's all, DIY built and just very resourceful. And so due to that reason, a lot of my mission is teaching people resourcefulness and just kind of like a mindset of it's not about resources, it's about resourcefulness. So this is something that, if I could build this, then I think it's possible for anyone to do it because I have no prior experience in any trades. So I got to learn all that along the way. In this photo, you see reishi over here, most prominently. It's a medicinal mushroom. It's actually a native species to Florida. So you may have even seen this growing around like a stump in your yard or out of a tree. It looks like a little antler. I brought some here to share to show what it looks like. It is a slow grower. It is very tough and leathery. It's not gourmet, so we're not going to eat it. I'll have this at our table for demonstration later. So after the talk, you can come by and feel it and smell it and just kind of take it in. And we grow all of our mushrooms in these filter patch bags. So it allows us to create a sterile condition where we can maintain all of the humidity and the nutrients and all the clean conditions that the mushrooms need in order to grow. But this one at some point started growing through that filter. So there's some plastic, kind of like when a tree grows through a fence. But this is a mushroom that we will turn into a medicinal extract that helps with blood pressure, blood sugar, stress, relaxation, and bolsters immunity. It's a super cool mushroom. That's Ganoderma lucidum. It's the scientific name for it. But yeah, we can grow a lot of reishi. Also, if you're into growing mushrooms, I recommend trying it. It's very easy to grow. It just takes a bit of time. So I'm going to move right along to the next slide. We were also on the cover of Edible Magazine about a year back with our pink oyster mushroom. I'm super proud to have been a part of this, and I never would have expected it. But pink oyster is a great mushroom. It's very crabby. It tastes like bacon actually more than crab, but it's so uncanny. But it's a beautiful mushroom, and it's what I first started growing, and it pretty much changed the course of history for me. So here I am with that. Just wanted to share some of that. I've also been teaching workshops for the last year and a half to teach people how to grow their own mushrooms. Um, and I just started teaching them recently from the farm, so that way you get hands-on experience with all of the grow equipment, as well as, you get to harvest mushrooms fresh from our room, and you take home a grow kit. I'll have flyers for that if you guys are interested after this, or if I dissuade you and you're like, maybe growing mushrooms isn't for me after seeing that presentation. But besides that, the education is super important to me. I remember as a kid, I didn't learn anything about mushrooms. It wasn't until I was like 21 that I heard about lion's mane. And if you look at the Google search trend, I didn't have it on here, but you can see where it's becoming so popular. It's like skyrocketing in the last 10 years. And so it's nice to be able to teach people how to grow that. But education is a huge part of my mission. I also like making YouTube videos to teach other people how to start a mushroom farming business, if that's the avenue they want to take, and to kind of help them with the business management side of it, because it's been super impactful on my life. So I like to share that. So typically whenever I teach these workshops or teach these seminars, I like to break it down into 3 levels of growing mushrooms. It is such a huge, vast topic. It's like, where do you even start? And a lot of people have that problem. They're like, there's so many ways that you can start or so many different methods, so it can be so daunting. But I like to just break it down into a couple different like categories where you can kind of choose a path and get good at that. So the first one that I always talk about would be grow blocks and grow kits. A lot of you have probably seen these. I think they even have them at Home Depot now. It's how popular they're getting. But these are a pre-colonized bag of mycelium and substrate where you cut it and you either spray it or you just leave it alone. The one I have on here, this is from North Spore. They're a company in Portland, Maine. They're a great company. Their customer service and education is really helpful. Their products are amazing. But that's a gold oyster kit. Very easy to grow. You could grow it on your kitchen counter. I like these because all the work is done for you, and it just reduces the amount of knowledge you need to just how to harvest it, how to know when it's ready to harvest, and kind of what to look for. So it reduces a lot of the things that would otherwise make you quit. A lot of people have problems growing and then they give up. But this is a great way to get started. They're also pretty affordable. I think $30 for like a grow kit. We were producing these, but my focus has been more on the medicinal side of things and less on the selling like grow kits. But it's probably something I would pursue again in the future. But yeah, this is the one here on the right. That's how we grow all of our mushrooms. That's a filter patch bag. It is a sealed plastic bag with a air filter on it, so that way you can let the mycelium grow. You can kind of see it growing here on the right side. And then once that's fully colonized and taken over that whole substrate, which is probably in this picture is probably a sawdust-based substrate. Once it's done, then you can cut the bag and let the mushrooms grow out, kind of like you see on the left there. So another thing that's great about these, you don't need to have like any sort of laboratory skills or sterile work environment. You can just cut the bag, and then within about a week to 2 weeks, depending on the species, it can grow very quickly. Another thing that's super cool about these grow kits is once you harvest it, it'll be dormant for about a week, and then it'll produce another flush. So you'll get another set of mushrooms, sometimes 3 or 4, depending on the quality of the grow kit and the amount of nutrients that are in there. And typically they just run out of moisture. Mushrooms are 90% water, so as they produce, they pull all that moisture out of the substrate. And so the substrate, once it's dehydrated, it won't produce any more mushrooms, but you can put it outside, and when it rains, they'll produce more mushrooms. So I'll talk more about mushroom composting and how to keep the process going at the end, but it is a gift that keeps on giving. Here's another example of some different ways that I like to share. This is like a mushroom garden bed that you can grow outside. These do great in Florida during some seasons and in certain locations. I've had some luck with these, mostly accidentally. because as a mushroom farm, we produce a lot of mushroom compost, which are spent blocks of, like, once this is done and we harvest from it, we'll put it either to the curb and you guys can pick it up for free. We'll talk more on that later. Or I'll add it to my own compost for enriching the soil, and it's super good compost. Whenever it rains, you'll see mushrooms popping up like this. And then those are, if you get them early enough, those are fine to cook and eat. So that's another great way to get started experimenting. If you start with a free mushroom compost pickup, I'd be happy to share the details later. But yeah, it's just something, I'm just, showing you some imagery to get the inspiration started and show you that there's very simple ways you can get started for cheap. So once we start getting into the more difficult avenues of mushroom production, it involves something called spawn. Raise your hand if you've ever heard of like mushroom spawn, grain spawn, plug spawn. Surprisingly, quite a few hands. That's amazing. I love to see that. So just for the everyone else, spawn refers to a vessel of mycelium. So the mycelium is the vegetative body of the mushroom, and the mushroom is like the fruit from the apple tree. You know what I'm saying? But this is like the actual living organism that produces the mushrooms. So it's the mycelium. It's below the ground. It's in the tree, and it's the actual living organism. And spawn is just that mycelium on something like you can use plugs if you're making logs. You get little furniture dowels, and those have the mycelium on them. And you can make logs that will grow mushroom. We use grain spawn, which is like oats, rye berry, millet, any sort of seed that's been hydrated and sterilized, so there's no competing organisms. And then we add the mycelium to it, so the mycelium will start breaking that down and it'll live on the seed, and then we can use that to inoculate those 400 blocks that you saw in the other picture. So this is where it gets a little more advanced as far as explaining it, but I have a really simple allegory that we'll use. And this is also a great way to experiment at home. So if you just bought blue oyster mushrooms, this is a fun experiment you can try. There's going to be little bits that you don't cook, like the little butt of the mushroom that you're going to cut off. You can take let me see, I hope I have a picture of it. Okay, just look at this picture for a second. You can take those little butts of mushroom, we'll just call them mushroom butts for now, for lack of a better word. And you take boiling water, you get it to a rolling boil, and you pour it over cardboard, and that's going to effectively pasteurize the cardboard. You'll do this in a bucket, like this 5-gallon bucket here. I did this a few days ago just for demonstrative purposes, but I just had some cardboard I shredded up really quick, threw it in the bucket, and poured boiling water over it, and let that sit until it was cool enough to handle. After that, once it was cool enough to handle, I squeezed out the excess moisture with clean hands to where it was just like, you can see it's partially hydrated in this photo. We want it to look like that. And once you allow it to cool and get all the moisture out of it, you add those mushroom butts to it and you kind of mix them in. This works great with oyster mushrooms, not so much with any other ones, but it works great with any oyster mushroom. The mushroom mycelium will leap off of the mushroom butts and onto the cardboard. And this is just after a few days of growth. So this isn't even full. If I leave this in here for a few more days, it will keep growing off of that, and you'll be able to use this. This is now spawn. This is cardboard spawn, so I can use this to inoculate my garden bed of straw or coffee grounds, and I'll talk more on that as well. But like I said, all I did was boil water and pasteurize cardboard, and then I'll also have this to where you guys can see it later. But yeah, and then the mushrooms will actually grow on this cardboard. Once the mycelium is finished growing, you'll get mushrooms that develop because that's just the life cycle. But because it's cardboard, there's not a lot of nutrients. It'll be like a very minuscule flush. But this is a great way. We taught this to 3rd graders, and they loved it. We did it with a whole class. They got to shred up the mushrooms. We came back in a week, and they saw mushrooms growing. So super easy, very accessible, and it's all using waste products. So at the very least, you make really good compost. But it's definitely part of the educational journey. I think it's a great way to get started for investing very little money. And then on the right here, we have the grain spawns. You can see the mycelium growing all over these different grains. In a commercial environment, we use that because it's going to be a lot cleaner and easier to scale than using cardboard. So yeah, I'll have this around later for you guys to see. But yeah, those are 2 great ways to get started. And then whenever I first was getting started, I would use mason jars and fill them. I would get grains from the feed store, like horse feed, just whole oats. I would boil them to get them pasteurized, but also hydrated, because mushrooms and mycelium, they need that moisture in order to grow. And then I would put it in a mason jar to where it's sterilized, and I could just watch it grow, the mycelium. So this is kind of advanced. It typically requires a pressure cooker in order to fully sterilize that grain. And whenever I talk about sterilizing or pasteurizing, the reason why is because we're creating a really good environment for fungus to grow, right? That's mold, any sort of mold. So if we're not sterile, then there's going to be competing molds like green mold, or there's orange molds that will grow and they can outgrow your mycelium. And that still happens. Even as a commercial grower, we'll have, 10 bags that get green mold on them, and we just don't use those. We compost them. But it doesn't mean give up. A lot of people run into that mold whenever they're trying to grow mushrooms. They're like, I failed. I'm not good at this. But that is just part of it, That means that you did part of it right because you made something that mold wants to grow on. So now it's just getting the right mold. So never, I always say fail forward and take it as learning opportunity. Yeah, fail often. You get it. Also, if you get used to that green mold at this level, if you ever grow lots and lots of mushrooms, like if you have a commercial operation, then you won't be so discouraged by it because you'll recognize it as just part of the cycle. So there's all kinds of things you can grow your mushrooms on. For most of this presentation, I'm going to be referring to what I'm an expert on, which is oyster mushrooms. And the reason I love those and love teaching people how to grow them, they're very aggressive. They grow very quickly. They can actually, I was talking about the mold that you would see growing, they will actually eat that mold and take over. So very few mushrooms can do that, but any Pleurotus genus, those are like pink oyster, blue oyster. Let me show you what they look like. They're beautiful. They have this rich blue color. This is king blue oyster, one of my favorites to grow right now, but you don't see this color like anywhere else in nature. It is so iconic and just amazing, very quick mushroom to grow. And just for explaining, I started this bag on June 28th. So that's how quick you get your mushrooms. Within 2 days, these will be 2 or 3 pounds. We'll harvest that, and then another week we'll have our final flush out of that. So this is how we prefer to grow it. This substrate base is an oak. It's 100% red oak, and we supplement it with organic soy pellets. That added nutrition make these mushrooms get really huge. You can also do like wheat bran. You can just do wood. You can just do rice. So anything that's nitrogen rich. So that's going to be, logs, cardboard, wood. I did a lot of experiments with coffee grounds. There's actually a business in South America that buys coffee grounds. Or I think they get paid to come pick up coffee grounds from cafes. And when you think about it, the barista pulls your espresso through the espresso machine, right? And that is pasteurizing the coffee grounds. So they've had that hot water run through them, and they sit in a bucket. And then you can take your cardboard spawn and then inoculate those coffee grounds. Because they're nutrient dense, the mycelium can grow on that, and that's a great way to practice growing for free. It's also a great way to keep all the coffee grounds out of a landfill. So I think that's a super cool business and just fun thing you can do. If you go to any cafe and you say, "Can I have your espresso grounds?" They'll probably give them to you. And like I said, worst case scenario, it's great compost. So you can just introduce that to your compost system. That's what's great about if you fail growing mushrooms, it just goes into the compost and nature just takes over it. Also, I always say that our compost grows better mushrooms than we do because we'll go and check and nature just does its thing, and it'll be like months later. I haven't grown gold oyster mushrooms since like maybe March or February, and after it rains, I'll go out there and there's little clusters that pop up just because of our composting activity. So super cool. I love seeing it. And I hope it lends some inspiration to you guys for some ways that you can get started, or at least, get the gears turning a little bit. I talk a lot about pasteurization and sterilization. And there's a lot of ways you can do this. I mentioned the boiling water. That works great for small volume if you're making like some cardboard or, whatever your idea is. If you have a huge volume and you want to do a big barrel of, like this is 55 gallons of straw, and then in the can is hydrated lime, right? Is that what it's called? I'm testing you guys if you're paying attention. I'm pretty sure you can buy that at any garden store. Hydrated lime, I'm almost positive. There's 2 different kinds of limes. I'm pretty sure you want to get that one. But if you just do a small amount of that in cold water and let it sit overnight, it raises the pH of the water, and that will pasteurize a large volume of substrate as well. I've done this for larger workshops where it's like 20 people. We need to pasteurize all this straw. In the barrel, that chopped straw you can get at Tractor Supply, feed store. You can find pine straw on the ground, and that works as a great substrate. It's not super nutrient dense, so don't expect huge mushrooms, but you are able to take that substrate and put it into a 5-gallon bucket like here, like you saw here, and then you drill holes in it and the mushrooms will come out of those holes. So if you take that cardboard and mix it in that straw and like do like lasagna all the way up, and about a month you'll have mushrooms coming out of the hole. So these are just different things to get you thinking on how you're going to start growing mushrooms. On the right here, this is a Presto 22-quart pressure cooker. You guys ever used a pressure cooker before for canning? Excellent. So I had never used one before growing mushrooms, but it is a great way to blow up your house. No, it's a great way to it's a great way to sterilize because it's able to boil water past 212 degrees, so you can sterilize your grains that you're using, or mason jars of your grains, or liquid cultures, and all your mycological activities. It's a great way to have sterile procedure. So, but for the average mycologist or the hobbyist, I don't think you need to worry about it. But it depends on how far you want to go with the process. Here's how we do it without a pressure cooker. It's not beautiful, but if it works, it's such a dumb idea. We have a 300-gallon stock tank from Tractor Supply, a brewer's kettle. So I just bought a brewer's kettle from a brewer, like a brewer hardware supply. And I drilled a hole in it to, I kind of wish I had a laser pointer, but you can kind of see here in the bottom right, there's a hose going into the brewer's kettle. It's insulated. And there is a float valve that keeps it full of water. And there's a heating element that boils that water. And then if you follow the steam hose, that goes into this big stock tank, and we're able to steam pasteurize 125 blocks of mushroom substrate. They're 10 pounds each. But we're able to steam pasteurize those, and in great volume, it only takes about 4 hours. So we just get it up to 200 degrees and hold it for 4 hours. There's a temperature probe in there that detects a core temperature in one of the bags. We just have it inside one of the bags. It will get to 200 degrees, hold for 4 hours, and then shut off the boiler. I'm not an engineer. Okay, this is probably the third iteration of this. I watched a couple of YouTube videos. There wasn't like a tutorial on exactly how to do this, but originally I had a 55-gallon drum, so that would hold 25 of these mushroom substrate bags. Outgrew that within a month, so I upgraded to this stock tank. But the idea is that you can get really creative and just use what's available and kind of engineer a little bit. Like I said, it took 3 iterations. I only melted a couple things. All right, but like I said, it's super cool to see what you can do, and I've made a YouTube video about this. A lot of people have reached out and they found it super helpful, so I'm very grateful that I'm able to share kind of what I've engineered a little bit. And like I said, this was probably 2 years ago. No, it's probably about a year and a half ago, and it is still running strong. We run it every time. The team calls it Bertha, Big Bertha. And it's super cool to see it in action. But that's how we pasteurize it. We also make all of those bags of substrate. We have a machine that I got off the internet. I didn't engineer that one, but I got it off the internet. Someone in Louisiana makes them, and it just measures out wood pellets and soy pellets and water, and you just press a foot pedal and it dumps them all in there. So it's super cool I feel like we're on the cutting edge of, like, just this thing is just getting started as far as the technology for manufacturing mushrooms. And like the machine looks like it was made from Home Depot parts, but it works great. And it's so cool because really, since I feel like the 70s or 80s, we've been cultivating mushrooms in this way. So it's such a young industry, and there's so much room for someone ambitious as myself to just come in and just try and figure it out. So I think that it's just very inspiring, and I like to just keep the process going. Once you start getting very advanced, we start getting into agar plates and liquid cultures. This is like what you study in mycology in school, or if you're like me, you went to YouTube University to learn how to do this. So just really quick, agar is a gelatin derived from seaweed, and you can make a petri dish, and you can grow the mycelium on that petri dish. And the reason we do this, it allows us to, one, isolate a culture. So if I go into the wild and I get an oyster mushroom, I can get a tissue sample, put it onto my blank petri dish, and grow the mycelium. It also allows me to make sure that there's no contaminants. So if I need to test a sample, I can put it on there and you'll see mycelium grow, or you'll see mold grow. I like to show this image down here because the one on the right, without any real fancy equipment, you can use ketchup cups like from a restaurant and pour your agar into there. You can just make the gelatin and just sterilize it in a pressure cooker or an Instant Pot or whatever you have available. And then you're able to use that as your petri dishes. And I taught this to one of my interns, and he is now doing great. He's growing cordyceps for us we process them into extracts. But it's super cool to see just people taking the knowledge and then running with it and just being very innovative. It's also very fun it's like creating a work of art. So it's great. I know I said it's advanced, but it's so doable. It's very accessible. It just takes practice like anything else. You're just making a gelatin, you know, and from there it's just takes a couple tries. I also showed liquid culture. So down here on the bottom left, liquid culture is the same thing as the agar, but instead of a 2D surface, it's a 3D growth medium. And this is great because it allows you to make a lot of mycelium. This is just a nutrient broth with the mycelium suspended in there. And the mycelium will continue to eat the nutrients and grow. And you can take a little bit of mycelium and stretch it out. So for instance, whenever I first started, I bought 9 syringes of the different varieties I wanted to grow. Reishi, blue oyster, pink oyster, 10 milliliter syringes. I made liquid culture jars like this with sugar water. That's pretty much my formula because it just provided enough nutrients. And I was able to take that 10 milliliter and expand it into 1 quart for each one, and it grows, and then you can take that and keep expanding it out. And then you take, this is where it all comes full circle, you take that liquid culture that you made and you add it to your grain spawn that you make. So then you take that the little milliliter of liquid culture, and you can make 100 bags of grain spawn from it. And with each one of those grain spawn bags, you can make 20 to 30 bags of substrate. So it scales tremendously. And then as you go, you can take tissue samples of mushrooms that are superior, or just that look cool, and you can clone those and start the process over. So the whole thing is super fascinating, and it just is such a rabbit hole to get involved with. And I love to see people just finding that they love it and just kind of losing themselves in it. It's been super awesome. So yeah, moving on. Once you start working with samples like this that are smaller and very sensitive to contamination because it's such a micro level of a particle, little contaminants in the air could land on what you're working on and cause mold to grow and ruin everything. So we start getting creative with ways that we can prevent that. If we look on the right, this is called a laminar flow hood. This is a big HEPA air filter. It filters out air to 0.2 microns. This is what we use in our lab. So essentially, it gives us a clean space where I can work in front of it, and it's filtering out air and creating moving air that's filtered, so that way particles in the air either get filtered out or they can't land on what I'm working on. So that prevents things from contaminating my clean environment. So that, and then of course, alcohol, wearing a gloves and a mask, that all prevents green molds and whatever else from growing. Then on the left here, there's a still air box. And for about a year before buying the laminar flow hood, this is what I used. You can cut holes in it like you see here, so that way you can reach in and do all your sterile procedure without particles landing on what your sensitive materials. But I just would put it on the counter and reach up under it, kind of like this, and it was fine. So I like to just show people, look, you don't have to do anything fancy. And that worked great. And that's just, most people would have one of these bins or have access to one. So it's a great way to do some home mycology without needing to spend $1,000 on a flow hood. Alternatively, you can build these. I've seen people build them and they work amazing. It's a fan and 2 air filters and then a frame. So no excuses. Here's a couple more looks at the grow room. Some more beautiful reishi with those concentric circles and the white and the yellow and the red. We intentionally spend a lot of time growing them in a sealed bag with just the air filter because it keeps them sterile while they grow very slowly. The grow room has a lot of moving air. We have to exchange the air 2 times every hour. So it's there's a high chance for molds to form on things that are in there for a month. So it's just a perfect environment for fungus to grow. So we keep this sealed, and then once it grows all the way up the bag, we'll cut the bag open, and that's why this one, you can see it's branching out, the rest of them aren't branching out yet. So that's why I recommend growing reishi, because you don't have to have a grow space or anything like that. You can just grow it in this bag, and there's one day you cut the bag open. We also see a wall of blue oyster. This is a Florida oyster is what it's called. It's warm weather acclimated, does great, and it's very resistant, and it grows very quickly. So those are awesome to grow, and they also taste savory, umami, crabby, like very rich, very meaty. So yeah. So I want to talk more about my current mission, current trajectory, and kind of the medicinal side of mushrooms. I've noticed through selling the mushrooms at markets and whenever I talk to everybody that a lot of people have had a history of poor health and health complications and dietary problems and prescriptions. And the thing I'm hearing is a lot of people are realizing that a lot of it stems from diet, and so they're switching to healthier options, fresh mushroom, fresh produce, but then also holistic medicine approaches because they've been damaged by prescriptions and side effects and just being an experiment essentially. So through talking to these people, I've been leaning more into making medicinal mushroom extracts after just reading the studies and seeing kind of just how powerful these things are, and that's been super awesome. So right now we grow the lion's mane and then we'll process it into a medicinal extract, and the same thing with reishi and cordyceps, and that's kind of where I want to focus more on because it's has the highest impact of anything I've done so far. Just hearing the stories from people where it's helped them with arthritis or with just being sharp and focused. It's super cool. So have a little bit of water really quick. I want to share some studies about lion's mane. I'm sure you guys saw lion's mane over there. If not, it'll be around at the end of the presentation. We can talk more about it, but also see it. So the big thing with lion's mane recently, how many of you guys have heard of lion's mane, its medicinal abilities? Okay, so about 50% we'll say. Honestly, I hadn't heard of it until 2021 and I was blown away. And the more I read about it, the more it just continues to amaze me. So the big thing with lion's mane is its neurotropic properties and its ability to increase nerve growth factor, which is the name NGF. Nerve growth factor is a protein in the brain that helps with nerve growth. Obviously, they named it well, and that is just it's overall so useful because that's memory, that's focus, cognitive function, and just the sharpness. But also it helps with preventing Alzheimer's and reducing inflammation and mood stability because it's helping with the protein synthesis in the brain. So this is based on a liquid extract of the active compounds in lion's mane. It is useful if you just eat it, but whenever you isolate these medicinal compounds, they're called aracenones and aranacines. They're very easy. They made it very easy to pronounce, but yeah, it reduces stress and inflammation. So this is another study that shows it helps with depression due to its ability to influence the nervous system and help with neural pathways. So I'm just going to cruise through these really quick. And then another study that shows its ability to reduce inflammation. This is the biggest thing that I've seen for people. My mom has rheumatoid arthritis, and I gave her the extract when I started making it because I was like, I want to keep her mentally sharp as she gets up there in age and kind of help with memory and everything. But it's the only thing that's helped with her inflammation from her arthritis in 10 years of being on anti-inflammatory prescriptions, because over time they lose their efficacy as you keep taking them. And then also side effects, which the list goes on. But this is a study in mice, but it definitely correlates with our clinical trials and with our testimonials as well, with our anecdotal evidence. So it's very interesting to see it playing out time and time again. And so that brings me to my dad. This is little me, and this is my dad when I was young. Definitely long before I was growing mushrooms or even knew I was going to be growing mushrooms. So my whole life, I've seen my dad struggle with sciatica, which if you don't know, it's the sciatic nerves in your lower back, and it can cause pain that is debilitating. For some people, they get bedridden and they can't. I'm actually in a sciatica support group on Facebook just to talk to people and get their story, and a lot of people are just, there's no solution. And it's very hopeless and bleak and really sad. My dad's a very active guy. Here, I'll show him fishing. He loves to fish. I had another picture of him skateboarding, but he's just a old kid, and to see him, I remember I have one memory of him having to crawl on the floor whenever I was a kid just to get into the kitchen. So that's always stuck with me. And I gave him the mushroom extract, same thing with my mom, to help him with memory and just to keep him sharp as he's getting up there. But I was surprised that it helped him with sciatica, and then I read studies that it's reducing inflammation and helping with nerve growth, and I'm like, of course. And so I started reading about it specifically for sciatica, and I was blown away that other people have found such a similar solution and similar help from it. So that's been super motivating for me, and that's been a big part of my mission. So it's good to see him. His thing is he's like, dude, I don't even want to talk about it because I'm scared I'm gonna jinx it and it's gonna go away. So it's super cool to see him not suffering. And I don't want to be bleak, but I've been super thrilled to be able to do that. So yeah, I just want to thank you guys all for being here also. So. And also, I'll take questions now. Okay, go ahead. Sure, yeah. So yeah, if you guys, I'll start wherever with questions. Whoever's first. I know we covered a lot of subject matter. Yes. Yeah, so she said, just for the recording and for everyone who didn't hear, whenever you have mushrooms that over time they grow a little too much, they get too ripe essentially. Do they become toxic, or do they just become not tasty? And there's a couple of different ways to look at this. If you store your mushrooms properly and like you harvest them like this and put them in the fridge, they're going to be good for 2 weeks. The reason that mushrooms typically go bad, a lot of people say they go bad quick, is because by the time you get them from the grocery store, they're 10 days old. So they go bad in 2 more days. And also, if they're not stored properly, that's the biggest thing with mushrooms. If you don't store them properly, they can become toxic in a way. So what happens is these are very moist. They're still producing humidity. And so if you put them into a sealed plastic container, they're going to be sitting in their own moisture. And what happens when a living organism is sitting in moisture? Bacteria grows. So the most recalled food of 2023 was the enoki mushroom, because we get 90% of our mushrooms from China and they ship over a long distance sitting in a sealed plastic bag. And so it became a hot spot for bacteria to grow. I forget which one specifically it was, but yeah, it was the most recalled food. So as long as it's stored properly and harvested within time, it's fine. If you let it grow too long and you're growing them yourself and they get all fanned out and tough, it'll be fine. It's just not going to be pleasant to eat. That's typically what happens. It's going to be really tough. So long answer, but I like to make sure we cover it all. I recommend storing them in the open air or in a brown paper bag. If they dry out a little bit, that's better than them getting moist. So yeah, if you store them properly in a paper bag or something, they'll be fine. Yes. That's a great question.
Don't forget to
What's that?
repeat the questions.
Yeah, okay. So she asked, what is the best way to differentiate toxic mushrooms from non-toxic mushrooms? Takes a lifetime of training. We say there's no amateur mycologists, right? Because if you go out there and just, you get one chance essentially. So there are a few that have no toxic lookalikes. When we find lion's mane in the wild, there's nothing that looks like it. There are other varieties of lion's mane, like bear's claw or bear's tooth or something that looks very similar, or like coral mushrooms, but there's not a poisonous mushroom that resembles lion's mane in the way it grows with its teeth. Oyster mushrooms, there's or reishi is probably a better example. There's no toxic lookalikes of reishi. There are mushrooms that look just like it, and they just have lesser medicinal properties. So those would be like artist conch, or there's a few of them that look just like it, but they're not going to be as vivid. So it just takes practice. I've gotten to a point now where I can confidently identify like 4 mushrooms outside, and I don't intend to be a mycologist expert. It's just not the avenue that I want to go. But the people who are good at it, they know, and it's like maybe it's a feeling that they get, or it just comes with, it's like the same way you can go out and identify plants. It just takes training. So if you're interested in doing that, there's great books that help with pictures, and there's great videos. But yeah, I think the most that I've gotten practice with is out of books. There's also, if you didn't know this, there's a lot of apps you can get on your phone where you can take a picture of the top, bottom, and side of the mushroom, and it'll give you 4 or 5 candidates for what it could be. So you can just look up mushroom ID, and it's a great way if you're just like at home, like, what's this one, instead of texting me. Yeah, yes, you in the back with a blue shirt. So she's asking if you can take a sample of mushrooms from the grocery store from me and then put it into a sterilized medium and have it grow. There are actually farms that have gotten started entirely by going to the grocery store, buying lion's mane, and then cloning it out. Now, going directly from fruiting body into substrate, probably not going to work. If you think about it, the lion's mane has been sitting on a shelf or out here in the open air, and there's contaminants. So typically, we're going to tear it open, get a tissue sample that's clean from the inside, and start from agar plates and start from that far back. Then you'll take that agar, cut it up, and put it in grain spawn. So you can't go directly into spawn or into your bulk substrate, but you can, yeah, take a field sample, find a mushroom in the woods, get a tissue sample, and then clone it. It's very possible. It takes a little practice. Right. For sure. Yeah, so she's asking, I'm just gonna repeat it for the video, of course. Like, where can you get reputable and reliable spawn and substrate and mycology supplies, spores, and all of that? I said this earlier. I like North Spore a lot. I think that they're great because you can email them and be like, "Hey, I have a question," and their customer service is amazing, and that's super important because we're all beginning pretty much is what it feels like. Um, I think if you can just find a reputable manufacturer, I also use Maine Cap and Stem. It might take some searching around. I just wouldn't order like from Amazon from like a no name, like random brand. I think if you can find like an American manufacturer, but also if you do go from like spores into a log, it's kind of like when you throw your seeds straight into the ground, you might get one or two plants that grow from it. But if you get seedlings and do that process, it's kind of comparable to that. So typically, it's best to break it down. Um, but also, if you wanted to, another way you can experiment. This is going to be a little bit of a tangent, but I think it's super useful. If you are wanting to start with spores and then do grain spawn, a great way to get started is with Uncle Ben's rice. Has anyone ever heard of this before? Okay, we got a couple. No reason. Uncle Ben's rice is a partially hydrated growth medium, and it's sterilized because it's a food product. So what you do is you take your spores and you inject it into a bag of Uncle Ben's rice, and then they will grow in there. You can tape it shut, and that is a great way to get started for $3 compared to buying sterilized grain spawn for $30 on the internet. So that's just an idea of just how creative you can get. Yes, you're in the front. It's partially cooked because it's like just the regular brown rice, Uncle Ben's, and there's videos on YouTube. It's Uncle Ben's, like growing mushrooms on Uncle Ben's rice. There's lots of resources on there. You had a question earlier in the plaid. Oh, right here. Sorry. Ganoderma and like reishi. She's asking if you leave a mushroom out on the counter after about a month, is it safe to use? I would say generally no, unless it's dehydrated properly. Because if you think about it, it's sitting there moist for who knows how long. The tincture process is pretty clean. You're going to sterilize it through, sitting in alcohol for months. But honestly, it's worth it to just do it right, start over, and just be confident that we know that we did it right, rather than being like, I don't know if this is right, and it's going to take 2 months to find out. So I would always just recommend, it's worth it just to dehydrate it and a dehydrator properly. It makes a great decoration though. Oh, it's already dried and you got it? Then it's fine. Yeah. Yeah. Of course. Yeah. And the way we can tell if it's like cracker dry, it'll be fine. But if it's got a lot of bend to it, you might want to run it through the dehydrator again. Yes. More questions? Yes, in the blue shirt. Thank you. Hmm. Honestly, it's hard to say. I would probably say lion's mane, but oyster mushrooms have also been shown to regulate blood sugar and insulin, and that is a huge bonus. And then they're all going to be anti-inflammatory. Um, they're also, I think oyster mushrooms are just immune powerhouse with their antioxidant and their macro content. If you're like me and you track your macros because of you're into fitness, they have a really good protein and carb ratio. It's more protein. I think it's it's not a huge protein, but it's better than vegetables. So I would say that definitely having a variety in your diet is going to be the best thing possible if you can. But if I had to pick one, I like the oyster mushrooms the most. Start to finish, if you have really good genetics and great substrate and you do it perfectly, about 2 weeks, two weeks to 21 days at the most. Like I said, we started this on the 28th, so it's not even a full month yet, and it's ready to harvest. Lion's mane, I feel like it grows just as quick. It just we actually were using North Spore for all of our genetics, and it was a little bit slower and produced smaller flushes, so we switched to a commercial provider for big mushroom farms, and they grow a lot faster just because over time they've isolated their best mushrooms. So, yeah. Any other questions? Yes, right in the front. Yeah, just for everyone who didn't hear, is it better to use? Is there a benefit to using Master's Mix for your substrate or just regular oak pellets? So Master's Mix in the industry is 50% oak pellets and 50% soy. It was coined by this guy T.R. Davis at his mushroom farm pretty recently. That's what we grow on. The high nutrient density by adding all the soy pellets to it, creates huge flushes of mushrooms, but it can also be complicated because it can lead to more contamination. So if you don't have a really great system and you're consistent, I wouldn't recommend it. But oak pellets do just fine if that's what you have access to. I would say use what's available. Yeah. Yes, sir. Right. Right. Yeah, so he was asking about inoculating a bed outside, like a garden bed, whether it's straw or mulch, with wine cap, which is a certain kind of mushroom that's gourmet, and it's very nomadic, so it'll pop up everywhere. There's a lot of videos on how to do it. In Florida, it's been a little tricky. I've had issues with it, but some people have found success. I think it's all about doing it in a shady area. And I think typically I've picked kind of partial sun. So if you can get an area that gets just very little light, that helps because dude, the sun is brutal and it'll cook it. That's always what happens. But it is possible, and the way you do that, you buy a wine cap sawdust spawn, not a grain spawn. If you buy a grain spawn, birds and creatures will eat it. But if you buy sawdust spawn, it's just wood chips that are inoculated. You'll bury those under your bed of wood chips and just water it, and that will. I've seen the mycelium grow very thick, but I never got any mushrooms out of it. So if you get successful results, I'd love to see it, and that'd be awesome. But definitely try it. I posted on the earlier in the slide there was a guy with the mushroom bed. I think it works great with oyster mushrooms, but wine caps are definitely worth trying. Yes, yes, you're in the front. Yes, right. She's asking. I'm just gonna repeat it one more time. If you're taking one of our mushroom extracts or any tincture in general, is it better to take it sublingual under the tongue, or does it lose its effectiveness if you mix it into a beverage? I've read as much as I can on this, and I can't find any loss of efficacy by adding it to a beverage. I prefer to take it directly, but it does have a mushroomy kind of alcohol taste because it's a dual extract and it's very potent where you do an alcohol extraction. So if you don't like the taste, I'd recommend. I've actually improved it a lot too. I'm very proud. But if you don't like how it tastes, yeah, adding it to a beverage has been fine for everyone. So. Yeah. Any more questions? I think we have a few more. I'm not sure how much time we have. Miss Denise, you would two more questions? Okay, yes, you in the front. So are we allowed to tour Harmony Mushroom Co., the facility? I'm totally fine with it, but I'd prefer if we could schedule it because I do live there. I've had people show up and it's fine. Like I've dedicated my life to this, but it is a little alarming, like waking up from a nap and there's someone at your house and you don't know. Like I said, if that's a sacrifice I have to make to have the impact I want to have, you guys are welcome to all show up. But I want you to have the best experience. I don't want you to show up and be like, you didn't come out. You know what I mean? So I knocked. But yeah, if you email me and my card's over there, I'd be so happy to. Or if you, just so you guys know, we offer pickup. So if you order anything from our website, fresh mushrooms, extracts, um, you can come and pick it up from our pickup area at the farm. And if I'm around or the team's working, we'll be so happy to give you a tour. Also, and then I'll get you will be the last question. We do. I mentioned this earlier, and I meant to come back to it. Once we're done with all these mushroom blocks, we compost them and we put them on racks at the street. And then on Mondays, people can come and take as many as they want and add it to your garden. It's a great way to get started experimenting with free substrate. But it does get all picked up by 5 o'clock. So we can give you more info on that, but we do offer free mushroom compost pickup as a way to just give back to everybody. So, and then the last question right here. For sure. Yeah, she's asking because it's all done inside and there's no seasonal limitations. Is there any reason we can't grow more kinds of mushrooms? We totally can. We can grow, I just prefer to stick to mushrooms that grow on similar substrates with similar conditions because it helps keep it all very consistent and predictable. So for instance, we grow blue oyster, gold oyster, pink oyster. We've done enoki, chestnut, Filipino, which is awesome. I didn't bring any tonight. Lion's mane, reishi. You can do cordyceps in there. We're just starting turkey tails. And then we've tried shiitake as well. Shiitake takes a long time, and I don't like to grow it, but yeah, I recommend you guys if you want to. Yes. Chanterelles. Okay, I'll touch on this really quick as a bonus question. People always ask if we can grow chanterelles, morels, chicken of the woods. These mushrooms, morels and chanterelles are great delicacies, but they are mycorrhizal. So this means that they have to have a lasting relationship with the roots of a tree. And so we are unable to cultivate them in the same way that we do these. Our mushrooms are saprophytic, meaning they break down dead or decaying material. But yeah, people are developing ways to grow morels, and they're patenting it. The people in Amsterdam and other places. So it is going to be possible. Like I said, it's a new industry, plenty of room for innovation. And then there's also parasitic fungi like cordyceps that grows on dead bugs. So we don't grow those either, but it's super interesting. Cool. Well, thank you guys so much. I'll be over here, and I'll be happy to take more questions. So.
I want to see a wedding where they hold mushrooms. You'll see it here at the garden club, right? I want you to give another big round of applause to Noah.
Can we take a photo? Can we take a? I would like to get a photo with everybody if we can. So Grant's gonna. Can he get up on the stage? Is that okay? Okay.
So we're so appreciative of him and his like amazing sharing this amazing knowledge. If you don't buy a mushroom tonight, you're crazy because they're delicious. And if you have never been to the Murray Hill Farmers Market where Noah is, that's where I met his not him but his booth.
Team. Yeah.
Definitely go check it out because it's worthwhile. Thank you so much for coming tonight.
Yes, thank
you. QR code back up on the screen. Please take a scan of it. Thank you so much for everyone. Now, if I can remember.
Oh, there you go. Sure, yeah. Yeah. Excellent. I'll be over there. Thank you, Denise. It's been amazing. Oh, hello. Here, I'll leave these here. You can touch it as well. I brought them here for demonstrations to get to know what they're like.